What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another Detroit Lions video, of course, and today we are here with our first stock watch of the 2024 NFL season. So make sure you use that top link in the description or top pinned comment because this video is being brought to you by BetUS, our sponsor for today's video, but also for this NFL season. So shout out to BetUS. We'll hear from them a little bit later in today's video. Before we get into today's video, unfortunately, I have to jump in here with some Detroit Lions updates and roster news. Now, this I plan on doing a separate video for, specifically for the players that we added today, because one player absolutely caught my eye when I saw that the Lions signed him, and I was actually really excited because if y'all have been around for a while, you know that this is a quarterback that we really liked, and this is when we were just first getting into kind of the whole draft scene and like following the draft. And this was a guy, man, and it was like, hold up, well, I should take this guy. I can remember that coming out of the draft, and the Lions have officially signed him. So I'm very curious to see what I think of him now, going back and watching him, because I haven't really done that since the player has been drafted, and back then I didn't watch it like I do now. So we'll do a separate video. I plan on doing that either tomorrow or Wednesday. I don't know what I'm going to look like tomorrow after surgery, but tomorrow or Wednesday is the plan for that. However, we do have some Lions roster news and injury updates, and I think if I don't throw that into this video, the video won't make a ton of sense. So it's going to make the video longer, but I think it just makes sense that I kind of have to do this. So we're going to do it. So first off, the Detroit Lions have reportedly waived injured wide receiver Antoine Green, which absolutely stinks to hear that kind of news. The Lions' former 7th-round draft pick out of North Carolina. And we had heard that he had dealt with a neck/concussion injury in the last game, seemingly taking the block, as we saw, where he was kind of laid out afterward. And now he has been waived injured, which means that if he gets through the waiver wire, he can land back on Detroit Lions IR, but then he is out for the season. Otherwise, he is then cut on an injury settlement after returning to the Detroit Lions. So this effectively, for now, kind of ends the season with the Detroit Lions, which stinks because, as you're going to see in this video, I thought that he had a good performance. It wasn't anything spectacular, but I actually thought he was in a good spot to also make this roster. But the Detroit Lions acted quickly on this situation. I don't think it's because he performed poorly. I think it's mainly just because of the injury, and that's why we have this update. Now, the receiver position is definitely wide open right now for guys to go take opportunities, and you'll see in this video, I don't want to spoil it, but there is a receiver that's a rookie this year that I thought performed extremely well, which we're going to talk about, but then it's also all of the other guys, the Donovan Peoples-Jones, the Caden Davis, the Maurice Alexander, the Traquan Smith, who we haven't really seen much of. All of these guys that have an opportunity, Brian Calhoun, to potentially work their way onto the Lions 53-man roster. The spots are there. The Lions may end up signing a receiver at some point. I absolutely hate this news because it felt like Green was absolutely trending the right direction. He felt like he was getting stronger, and I felt like he had some polish within his game as a route runner. So I'm still going to talk about him in today's video because I did think he performed well, just to spoil that. But unfortunately, he is no longer with the Lions. The second move there is that the Detroit Lions have also let go of offensive lineman Ike Boettger. Now, again, don't want to spoil it, but Ike Boettger I didn't think had a great performance, so we'll talk about that a little bit. And I'm going to leave that in the video, but he is no longer with the Lions as of now, and that one does make a little bit more sense, especially considering that I didn't think the performance was good whatsoever. Plus, as you're going to see in the video, I thought a lot of interior offensive linemen actually stood out in this game. Like, there was an overload of depth there where I was like, oh, snap, there's a lot of guys performing well. Plus, Christian Mahogany hopefully is on his way back soon, as he is now back in the building for the Lions, and they're working to get him physically ready to play. So they have let go of Ike Boettger. Now, in return, the Lions have went out and signed a linebacker, Ty Summers.
Now, as I touched on, I do plan on doing a breakdown for this player and for the other player we're going to talk about within the next couple of days. However, it wouldn't surprise me from the little that I know of Ty Summers that he would come in and compete at the sandbacker position once we talk about James Houston here in a second.
A former 7th-round pick back in 2019 by the Green Bay Packers. A pretty freaky athlete that has the build to play linebacker, has the athleticism to play linebacker. There's always been questions about his play speed, so I'll have to dive into him a little bit. I know the name, though. I know him from the Packers. Then also, here we go, Jake Fromm, baby. Quarterback Jake Fromm, the former Georgia Bulldog, the former 5th-round pick by the Buffalo Bills, is officially a Detroit Lion. Again, Dan Campbell was thinking maybe by Friday, but probably won't play then this weekend. And now we bring Jake Fromm quickly into the building. I want to see this guy play. I'm a Jake Fromm guy. I'm a big fan, man. Not the most athletically gifted quarterback, if you know Jake Fromm. A bit more stocky in terms of his build, but I remember really liking the touch on the football that he brought, just kind of the awareness that he brought to the quarterback position, the football intelligence, and that was back years ago. So I'm not sure how I feel about that now when I'll go back to him, but I am so excited to see that name, and I'm very pumped to dive into that when we do a video on that. And again, hopefully that's tomorrow or Wednesday. We got time, but that is the plan there. So those are the two additions Lions made. And then finally, on the injury side of things, we got a lot of update here. First off, the key one for me is James Houston, where Dan Campbell said that Houston's been hurt, and obviously we saw him play that sandbacker position. Again, I'll talk about that more in the video, but it did not look great. Specifically, the Sam Backer responsibilities. Not as much pass rush for me. I actually walked away like, well, the pass rush wasn't bad. He had a nice little dip, had a quarterback hit, but it was more so the Sam Backer role and all the responsibilities there didn't look great. And Dan said that he's going to work now more as a true defensive end once again, where he's either setting the edge against the run or he's rushing the passer. Now, that doesn't mean that his makes his opportunity to make the team any easier. All it does is, one, it makes us a little bit thinner at kind of that Sam Backer role. And now without Nate Lynn, we're a little bit thinner there. Matthew Betts, because they've already kind of taken that role responsibility off his shoulders as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on how that all shakes out. Maybe Summers can get some work there. But that definitely will play into James Houston's skill set. But clearly they walked away like, okay, this is just not worth trying. He's at his best as a pass rusher. Let's try to make that happen. He's not built like a pure defensive end, but that's what the Lions are going to try to do. They're not giving up on James Houston, clearly, by making that decision, but instead they're saying, let's try to play to his strengths and let's see if that he can set the edge well enough to make this thing work, to at least make the 53, be capable on special teams, and be able to get up the passer, which is what he does best. But he said he's been hurt, so we'll keep an eye on that one. I think that's a key update, though, as we talk about these and kind of see what that looks like, similar to a guy like Matthew Betts. Also, still no participation today. Aleem McNeil, Kevin Zeitler, Sam Laporta, Malcolm Rodriguez. Dan Campbell said he's improving, but he's not going to be ready, likely. Carlton Davis, Malik Jefferson, who according to Dan Campbell is a couple of days away. Ron Gilbert, who according to Dan Campbell was injured Sunday. We got to get him back out there because Gilbert had a nice performance. Mo Norris, and then of course they hit on James Houston. And then finally, injuries that occurred today, at least as I know of as of now. Terrion Arnold, apparently he's dealing with some sort of upper body injury, left practice early. Enos Rakestraw Jr. left practice early, seemingly with an ankle injury. We got to keep an eye on that one because he did miss time back in Missouri as well. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, which was reported, I believe, by Adam Schefter, dealing with a hamstring injury is what it was said. We don't know the severity of these. We don't know how long these guys are going to be out or how serious any of these are. Hopefully none of them are that serious. With the Gibbs situation, because it was reported, it feels like it might be more serious. If that is the case, it's an opportunity. I love our running back depth, but Sione Vaki, I'm telling you, he's got an opportunity then. Take advantage of it. And I know that he will, to be honest with you. But the other two, hoping for the best for all of these guys, but definitely at cornerback there, because after a really good performance, we need those guys to be ready. The good thing is you don't really need to see Terrion play anymore, to be honest. But Enos Rakestraw, I don't think you need to see him play either. We just need to get those guys healthy. They have time. All of these guys have time, but that is the key right now. Unfortunately, I can't give you any better updates on that until, just time goes on. Time will tell. But with that being said, I thought I'd have to throw this in here before we get into the video. So I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully I made that quick enough. Now let's get to the video. Again, expect a video breaking down these players in the future, next couple days. But for now, I'm going to leave it there. Now let's go to the stock watch. And anybody that's no longer on the roster, I apologize. I had already put the video together. So you know how it is. That's just how it is during the preseason. Let's get to the video. But yes, we're here with our first stock watch. Now, I was planning on doing like the defensive line breakdown first. However, we're here. And that's because I went back through today, rewatched it with the All-22, took more notes. And I was like, you know what? I got a lot of thoughts on a lot of different players. Let's just do the full stock watch. Now, this could change after I say do a defensive line breakdown, and maybe I like a player a little bit more than I initially thought, and he would actually go in the up category rather than the middling category. So things could tweak after this video. It's very possible because I'm going to be watching this game even more going forward. However, where I'm at right now, I love doing the stock report or the stock watch because I have to look at a lot of different positions and try to keep everybody in mind. Now, not every player is included on this list. Certain players, maybe I just didn't feel like I saw enough, but also maybe there were certain players that didn't stand out either direction for me, so I just did not include them on this list, but they could be on this list after week 2 or after week 3 of the preseason. Also, this is my opinion. This is based on what I saw in the game and also kind of my expectation coming into the game, so just keep that in mind. This is not like, hey, here's how I think Dan Campbell feels about this. It's a little bit more so on how I felt about just watching the player play in that first preseason game, okay? So this is my opinion on this based on what I've seen. That's just is what it is. I'm just laying you out there right now.
A quick side note here, while I did include a player like Connor Galvin, I did not include, say, Nate Lynn, for example, because of the injury and him being out for the season.
I'm going to start off with the stock up category. The players that really impressed to me going back through this game, the guys that really stood out for me here. And again, we're going to be hitting on a lot of different positional groups. So buckle up. Let's get through this. Now, I will say the cornerback position, when we get there, I'm going to have a lot of names listed, but there's also, we're kind of going to fly through that because we've already talked about it. And I'll try to fly through most of these. That way this video is not incredibly long. There will be clips, but I'm going to try to fly through this because this video will be crazy long with the amount of players that we do have listed here. So let's start off stock up category, right? These are the guys that I believe helped themselves after the first week in preseason. And we, of course, have to start off on the offensive line, and we have Duke Clemens first, who played really left guard for us in this game. I thought Duke Clemens was really incredible. He's a center. He played left guard for us in this game. And for me, it was mainly about pass protection. I thought he was awesome. His ability to be consistent, handling one-on-ones at the point of attack, stalling out pass rush early. Now, I do think, technically speaking, he could see some problems in future games for early losses, push-pull losses, those kind of things, maybe being over his toes in terms of his weight. But it didn't really show up as an issue in this game. And I thought he was maybe our most consistent pass protector. Honestly, one of the biggest things that stood out to me that I wasn't expecting when going through the rewatch was that the second and third unit interior offensive line, there was actually a lot of good performances in there. Not everybody, but I thought there were some good performances in there. And Duke Clemens, to me, really set the tone with that. The center out of UCLA, one of our undrafted free agents, I liked him a lot. He was the one UDFA that I was like, I would circle this guy on the offensive line. But to then prove that he can also do that at guard, I think definitely helps himself. But this was a great performance for Duke Clemens really throughout this game. Continuing on, now we have the man that got some guaranteed money as an undrafted free agent, and that's Kingsley Egukan, who handled the backup center position for us in this game. But really, he was with the first string team because there was no Graham, there was no Frank, and we saw guys like Michael Neese kick to the guard position. Kingsley Egukan, a lot of things that you liked about him coming out of Florida, I thought translated immediately into this game. Athletically speaking, that was the biggest standout. He moved really well. We had a lot of outside zones, a lot of zone blocking opportunities in this game, and I thought he handled those responsibilities really well. He allowed for reach blocks. He got up to backers. He was pretty good at target finding once he got into the second level. And then in pass protection, he was good as well. Now, I thought there was occasions where, as you're going to see by this thing here, at times, maybe reaching in pass pro a little bit. The quarterback sneak was also kind of a disaster in terms of getting movement. He's not the biggest people mover, but he did do well in positioning, seal blocks, those kind of things. I thought overall Kingsley had a pretty solid showing in this game at the center position, and I think he's definitely making a case for him to make the team. And this is what I'm saying. There was multiple players I think actually did well on the backup of the interior offensive line, including Brian Hudson. Now, the big issue here for me was as a run blocker, I didn't feel like he was a consistent people mover. Most of our centers that we brought in are not really people movers necessarily. They're more athletic. They get out and they move well. Brian Hudson was just that back in college, and I think that that's what he put out there for the Lions, the Louisville center, in his first game. I thought Brian Hudson, who played 35 snaps, which is a lot, was pretty darn consistent in pass protection throughout this game at the point of attack as well. So definitely want to put him on here. Again, would like to see more people moving as a run blocker, but overall I thought his whole performance was a good performance. And for the first time, because it's really difficult to take these things away in camp, and we may do a full breakdown offensive line, defensive line, that's kind of what I'm aiming for, but I thought for the first time, like, this guy really stood out to me in terms of his performance. We brought a lot of backup centers in that were pretty nice in college, and Brian Hudson did his thing as the third string center for us in this game. But the guy that moved to guard and has proven he can play both backup center and guard, he's mainly been listed as our backup center, but the ability to play guard I think just helps his case. That is Michael Neese. And Michael Neese, to me, looked like a veteran in this game. Again, not perfect necessarily, but as a zone blocker, I think he stood out. He has pull blocking experience. He can run the gap scheme and be successful there. He's built like a guard, but it was really the zone blocking, the reach zone, the athleticism, the ability to cut off blocks and springboard guys into the second level. That is what stood out for me for Michael Neese at guard. And then pass protection was good as well. So I thought Michael Neese had a good performance. I thought those four guys stood out in this game, which makes me feel pretty comfortable about the backup interior offensive line position. And we have another one that we haven't even listed yet, but these are all new additions for the Lions. I thought they all performed at a good to really good level for guys like Duke Clemens. Keep in mind, this is really not in any specific order. I kind of just listed these players, so just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this. Now, of course, we have to move on to the cornerback position and the defensive backs just in general. We have Khalil Dorsey, Amik Robertson, Stephen Gilmore, Brandon Joseph. We actually have more corners in this. Let me just keep it moving. Terrion Arnold, Enos Rakestraw Jr. We did the video on this and we kind of talked through these guys, so I won't spend much time here, but this unit together was exceptional. Brandon Joseph had the interception. There was little things, we went through with Rakestraw. There was little things there. I thought Terrion was great, even though he didn't even get targeted in this game. Just the movement skills looked really good in this one. Robertson, maybe the player of the game, at least a standout player from the broadcast version. He was big time. Initial takeaways, I didn't remember Stephen Gilmore standing out that much, but after going back through it, and we didn't really talk about him in that video, going back through it, I stepped away and I was like, you know what? Stephen Gilmore actually had a pretty good game, right? When he was targeted, didn't really allow completions. I thought he was pretty impactful in coverage. He was pretty consistent in coverage as well, and just staying contested with guys. I don't think it was a standout performance, but it definitely wasn't bad. I thought it was a plus performance for Stephen Gilmore. It's going to be really tough in a crowded cornerback room, and I think Khalil Dorsey is just separating himself with every day at training camp, the consistency that he plays with, the feel that he seemingly has for a young corner. He just has a great feel. So I think he's separating himself as like, hey, I'm going to make this team. That being said, though, I thought that whole position group really showed up, and we saw that when Drew Lock was on the field. They made it difficult for guys. Now, Deron Gilbert, got to give the linebacker some love in this game as well. Again, a guy that just felt like he had a really nice understanding of what was going on. A little bit undersized. They got him on the wheel route, which was kind of set up by a pick. Like to see him be maybe more decisive there to get out onto the wheel route. But outside of that, he showed up against the run, and he's a little bit undersized there. I really felt like he's consistently showed up as a pass rusher back at camp, even though we didn't really see that in this preseason game. But he showed up against the run. He was where he was supposed to be in pass coverage. He had a pass breakup, little underneath pass. I just thought he had a really good awareness and a good feel. He forced the fourth down, where they did pick it up ultimately, but he forced that play. I think he actually got in on the tackle on this sneak that they ran, but they did pick up the first down. But he forced that, reading the quarterback, taking it away, and tracking him down. So he didn't look like incredibly athletic in this game, I didn't feel like, but he looked like he was playing fast, and that was the biggest thing for me with Deron Gilbert is he was playing fast in this game. Continuing on, we have Ben Neiman and Jalen Reese-Maybin. This is the position to me that is probably been maybe the most surprising because the additions aren't like, whoa, who are we adding to this role? First round pick, second round pick. Like, it's not that, but instead, these guys have all showed up, and all the good things that I think, where else they were, like that you saw in college, has shown up here. And Jalen Reese-Maybin, after getting the 2-year deal, I thought he had an excellent performance to begin this game, and he got things started the right way. Obviously, he shut down the screenplay. He played incredibly fast. Jalen, I'm so glad we have that guy. Ben Neiman, I thought showed a lot in this game, not in terms of just like man coverage skills. I think that's still quite concerning. I didn't think his zone was perfect, not necessarily perfect, but he did do a pretty nice job late in plays. He played with awareness. He plastered routes, and again, run defense for me was the biggest thing. Some stack and shed ability.
Michael Vick here at BetUS.com. Get it all. Huge bonuses, great odds, a race book, live in-game betting, and a casino. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
But that's not what you thought of when you thought with Ben. I thought of just a very smart player that was where he was supposed to be. And I thought that showed up in this game, but also the run defense was the biggest thing. And for me, Ben Neiman falls onto this list because of that. Moving on to the receiver position, the two guys that were the most productive in this game both fall on this list for me, Antoine Green and Isaiah Williams. Antoine Green, 3 receptions in this game. I love that the Detroit Lions they had a urgency to say, let's get the ball in his hands. Let's see what he can do after the catch. He had to speed out. The thing with Isaiah Williams, I didn't think he was necessarily showing success in like, oh, I didn't expect that, or I've never seen that before. I thought a lot of things that we kind of knew about him, he just brought and put out there, which was good. It's like, okay, he's consistent. He can win on speed outs. He's got good footwork for that. Went up the ladder to make that grab, got his feet down inbounds. He was a very willing blocker, which last year, that's pretty much all he did outside the Baltimore game, and he blocked really well. Unfortunately, had the concussion.
For me, maybe pushing this vertical could have helped create separation so that this underneath defender wasn't kind of playing this in-between game.
And Isaiah Williams probably the biggest standout from the game at the receiver position, and a guy that after rewatching it, like first you watch him live, you're like, that was good. Then you rewatch the first time, like, that was good. And then I rewatched it again, I'm like, man, this guy might make the team. Like, that's the part that I got to because it was so easy to overlook with all the fountain buzz, and I'm a big fan of Caden Davis, and you got Peoples-Jones. It's easy to overlook Isaiah Williams mainly because of his build. You're like, I don't know about that, right? He's under 5'9". Like, I don't know what's his spot on this team. But how good he was at Illinois, I thought he was going to be a draft pick. He was a guy that when we picked him up, he was above, for me, multiple players that actually got drafted. So I was a huge fan back at Illinois. Always thought he could separate, and I thought in this game, again, the route tree played to his skill set, I thought, pretty well. We saw the crossers, we saw the drags, but he showed exactly what you want to see. He came down with the football. He was one of the most consistent separators, it felt like, in this game as well. Like, when they needed to find somebody to get open, Isaiah Williams was getting open. So Isaiah Williams, to me, like, I don't think he put himself into, like, this guy's making the team. But he also has some of that return background as well. Lions have kind of dabbled with that a little bit as well. If there's a surprise at receiver to make the team, it could absolutely be Isaiah Williams because he's off, to me, to the best start of any of the receivers that are kind of battling for this position because he just did exactly what you would expect of him. And to me, he's got more upside than, say, a guy like Tom Kennedy because of his separation upside that does bring table and some of the run after catch. I don't think he's elite there, but he does have some ability, and we saw that on a big first down that he ended up picking up. So this is a guy that he has enough in the tank to make a 53-man roster. I don't doubt that. And this was a great start to put him in position to try to do that. Now, continuing on, we have Hendon Hooker. The biggest thing for me with Hendon Hooker, and it wasn't the perfect day, but after rewatching it, I just liked how decisive he was. I think we're going to have to do a quarterback video. He had 2 drives in this game. He was not perfect, right? You had the one missed pass, the real missed pass, which was the deep curl to Maurice Alexander. The other one that was kind of missed, but again, I don't hate that he threw it, right? There was pressure. He got the ball in his hands, threw the crossing route to Maurice Alexander just a little bit high on the play. But outside outside of that, I think for the most part, he was just decisive. He said, okay, I felt it, and I got the ball in my hands. Even if maybe that's not where they wanted the ball to go, he just got the ball to his hands. I think they also did a really nice job play calling wise to play into his skill set, got him on the move, simplified things, and he was very decisive, like, I'm going to take off and run. And there wasn't a lot of second guessing. Sometimes I was like, ooh, man, he could have hit the flat there. Like the time where he did take off and he ran to the 4-yard line. I was like, oh, he probably could have took off. He probably could have dropped it into the flat. Maybe we could have scored on that. Maybe. And then there was the fade, which I thought maybe he could put a little more air on it. Wasn't a bad throw. Maybe he could put a little more air on it. And then there was the blitz where the offensive line, our left guard, steps down and we just give up a free rusher, which we probably shouldn't have, but we end up giving a free rusher from second level. And even though I think we only gained like a yard to Bam Knight where he did the little swing route, still like that he was decisive. He felt it, got the ball to his hands, like, let's just not take a negative. That was probably the biggest standout things. Athletically, we know that he's a gifted athlete. And passing the football, obviously the velocity is there. The touches can be a little hit and miss, and he can sail passes, so you want those things to dial in. But that being said, for Hendon Hooker's first game as a Detroit Lion, it feels like he's a rookie. If you told me this was year one Hendon Hooker and that's what he looked like, I'd be like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So I think for me, after rewatching, I'm a little bit higher what I initially thought on Hendon Hooker when we did the immediate post game. Again, I didn't think it was perfect by any means, right? And still some of the things that I want to see him improve upon going back to Tennessee. I didn't maybe walk away feeling like, oh, he showed all that. Like at Tennessee, he took care of the football. We knew that he would do that. He would throw the football away. He wouldn't throw the ball into traffic. Like we knew these things. We knew he was athletic. But at Tennessee as well, like missing easy throws was an issue. And he missed an easy throw, I would say, in this game. That being said, though, he was poised. He had the little crossing route to Isaiah Williams, which did pick up the first down, and I thought he was just decisive. This was a great start for Hooker. Hopefully we can see him again soon. I'm sure the Lions will sign a quarterback because of the concussion, unfortunately. I wonder if it was the play from breaking tackle. Can we confirm that it was because he ran the two guys over, or was it the next play when he took off again to the 4-yard line? I just wonder a little bit, but obviously he showed the talent was there. I'm a big fan of Hendon Hooker. You guys know that, right? Like, I mocked him in the first round when he was coming out. And you guys knew I was a golf guy, but I was like, dude, I like him. He's awesome. Give me Hendon Hooker if we can. We got him in the third round. We stole him. And I think early reaction, I think Hendon Hooker is going to be tough because Hendon Hooker is going to be talented enough to be a starter somewhere. And it's okay with me to have two good starting quarterbacks. I rock with that. We have Isaac Ukwu, probably the most consistent pass rusher for me in this game, the Ole Miss undrafted free agent. Just thought he was consistent, right? I thought he showed some dip in this game. He was able to get after the quarterback. He showed some success stopping the run as well, but in terms of just consistency as a pass rusher, he was the most consistent pass rusher in this game, and we'll talk about him a little bit more when they do the defensive breakdown. Safety position, this isn't like wow, but it was like, okay, that didn't look bad, and these are really guys that we haven't talked about at all. We have Garnes out of Wake Forest, and we have C.J. Moore, who's coming back this season. And it's kind of weird because we don't really talk about C.J. Moore as I feel like we haven't talked about C.J. Moore at all, but C.J. Moore has been a nice player for us. And he's grown here. He's learned to play different positions at the safety spot for us. He's been reliable. He's been always a big special teams contributor. And right now it feels like he is absolutely on the bubble. Like it almost feels like he's outside looking in depending on how many safeties they actually keep. I thought Garnes looked solid. It wasn't like he was doing anything special, but as a single high, as a free safety, I thought he looked solid in that role. When he would step down, he had some good man coverage reps. Again, it wasn't anything crazy there, but he contested well. He moved well. I thought he eliminated a lot of false steps. And for me, C.J. Moore, I thought, again, similar thing there, but he was very willing to step down and play the run. You could see the activeness within his game and where he wanted to stand out. So I've always been a C.J. Moore fan. I was happy we brought him back, but safety depth definitely a competition. You have guys like Brandon Joseph now who are just like, man, he's just picking everybody off. And then we have KO'd. I should have put this at the top. I apologize. I kind of threw some of these in here late. But KO'd for me was actually pretty good in this game. It was a guy that I didn't really mention at the beginning. He's playing right guard for us. He's played both guard positions. I thought he was good. First off, you saw real flashes of, like, I'm a people mover as a run blocker. And we know he has good length, and he's shown real good anchor ability. We've seen that in practice. We've seen that in camp. We've seen that in the past. And I thought it showed up in today's game as well. So he's going to be susceptible to some losses. But I think for him, he is just growing, and he's getting better at what he's good at. KO has continued to feel like he keeps taking steps forward, and I walked away pretty impressed by the way that KO performed in this game, and I wanted to give him some love. Again, offensive line, defensive line, we'll probably dive into that more a little bit going forward. Sione Vaki was the guy at running back in this game. He was the standout. He didn't do anything in the pass game for us. He didn't get any opportunities to. Hopefully he does soon in the preseason. He's going to make the team to me, and I think, when you see it like on special teams, he had a really nice block in camp yesterday when they were working on some of their blocking drills, but Sione Vaki with the ball in his hands looked dynamite, all right? He was electric. He was the same guy at Utah, just put in a Lions uniform of like, oh, let that guy get downhill and there's a problem. Again, fluidity, pressing the line of scrimmage, timing, pacing, those kind of things probably are going to need work. Like there's going to be some like, oh, what the heck was that? We got to keep moving, man. But the flip side is that Vaki is the same player in space where he's shifty, he's bursty, he has excellent contact balance, my favorite aspect of his game. If you guys go back to my breakdown, I loved his contact balance, and he showed that immediately in 2 carries. You walked away like, oh, this guy's got it. That's how I feel. I walked away like he has the it, to the point where I was like, hey, CMC. I was going crazy. I was going a little crazy, but I think Sione Vaki is really going to be special. I think he is going to be the next like special draft pick the Lions made in day 3. I really, truly believe that he's going to have like this. He can be like the St. Brown of the running back room. I truly believe that. I think Vaki can be special. I've got to be patient, though. I think it's going to take time to round out the game, pass pro, all of those things. But I think he can be special down the road. Tom Kennedy, again, Tom Kennedy just does his job. There's a route tree you run. He's consistent on out routes. He comes down with the football when the ball hits his hands. That's what I like about Tom Kennedy. You're not getting things that break, like what you expected. And unfortunately, we didn't get a tons of opportunities. We had poor pass pro in this game. We had some missed throws. That being said, Tom Kennedy is super reliable. And even the times he wasn't getting the ball, I still walked away like, I like how he ran that route. I like how his physicality was used and he got himself open. I walked away impressed with Tom Kennedy in this game, just being Tom Kennedy, being exactly what you would expect, being a viable run blocker as well. That's what I like about Tom Kennedy. Then we have the tight end position. I want to give these guys both love. James Mitchell had the one little reception where he turned it into some run after catch. He's also an impactful blocker, which has always been something I've liked about his game. I just feel like it's never been given credit. Is like last year, I was like, man, I really like him in pass pro. And I thought today again, or in this game again, he showed some things as a run as a blocker. Parker Hesse as well at the tight end. I list him as tight end, though he's kind of our fullback.
I also want to hop in here as well because he did make a nice stop on punt team as well.
He's helping himself, right? He had the bobbling catch, which he turned into a first down from Hooker, which was great. Outside of that, really didn't do much with the ball in his hands. I didn't think his lead blocks were incredible. I thought they were okay. He typically got contact. He just wasn't always clearing a path for the running back. But I think that ability to play fullback and play tight end and show some usage and effectiveness there and comfortability with the quarterback, I think has been big. I think there was times in this game where he could have got the ball where he didn't, like on the little flat route. So for me, man, Parker Hesse is a guy that I don't know if he's going to make the team, but he's doing everything that he can to find a way to carve out this role. The last one's a little bit hard to see, but we got Mitchell Agu, the edge rusher. To me, mainly run defense. There was countless occasions where I felt like he was just driving his tight end or the tackle back into the pocket. As a pass rusher, I thought there was a lot of good flashes. Then it kind of stalled out. You started to see some, I think, the stiffness as a pass rusher a little bit, but you definitely saw some of the knockback. He has the long arm opportunity, some bull rush upside. He showed a little bit of kind of like the club skip, but overall for me, I thought it kind of stalled out there just a tad. So you're like, okay, there could be a limitation truly to how much he can do as a pass rusher, but the flip side is he's a consistent run defender, and that's kind of what he's going to have to bank his game on, his consistency there, and how much can we do as a pass rusher. Then, of course, Jake Bates. He kicked it one time. Honestly, if you threw kickoffs into this, maybe you wouldn't put him up here. I don't know what they were trying to do, though, but he made a 53-yard kick outside. That's enough for me. Jake Bates, there you go. And he made a 64-yarder yesterday. So, yeah, Jake Bates, you did your thing. You're on this list. Nate Sudfeld here. Now, the biggest thing that I thought was a positive was coverage feel, specifically early within the play. Reading what the defense was going into, the quickness in terms of Tampa 2, reading that, the little third down conversion to St. Zylstra that he had, the quickness on the speed outs. I thought he showed a nice early coverage feel for what the defense cover 3, cover 2, what a man coverage. Do I have a beat? Oh, there's a rolling safety. It's one-on-one. Take the shot. I thought that was probably the best aspect of his game. Was good coverage feel. And he also got his game going a little bit by taking off, utilizing his legs, and he showed some things there that you don't really expect of Sudfeld, but he's a pretty good athlete. Got out of a sack one time, picked up a first down. The other one on the boot, he kind of scrambled out and picked up about 6 yards on the play. Negatives, of course, were these two missed passes to me. First one, the biggest one, was the miss to Jalen Calhoun, because that one could have been a touchdown, and it was an out route. It wasn't incredibly open, but it had a chance, and he threw it over the guy's head. Now, I understand Calhoun isn't the biggest receiver. That was a big miss. The Tom Kennedy miss, that one could have been a first down. Like, if Tom Kennedy just catches that cleanly the first time, it's probably still a first down, even though it came out a little bit late. Reading the defensive back dove. He didn't actually take the corner, so you had Fountain actually wide open, but I can understand why the route setup he was going there with the football regardless. It's just that the ball needed to be out like a hitch faster to help with that opportunity to not get pulled back to the line, and then Tom Kennedy sliding down bobbles it, and then he falls back behind the line of scrimmage. It looked good, but he fell back behind the line of scrimmage. And then, of course, the quarterback sneak, which we just got blown off the ball. Kingsley got pushed back into his lap, that kind of thing. Then the other miss, of course, was the easy one. That was the out route to Tom Kennedy. So I didn't have as big of an issue on the one that was like low, and if he would have caught it cleanly, it would have been a first down. It wasn't great, but it was very capable. But I had more so the issue, of course, with the out route to Tom, which Tom ran really well on a third down, which just did not get there. Played a much larger sample size. So, you could say, and like Dan Campbell said, the ball was wet, that kind of thing. Hooker missed a pass too, so who knows, with more snaps, as he missed 2 or 3, probably. My biggest issue for me was the reactiveness to pressure. Now, this wasn't every time, okay? Like certain examples too, where you see it and you're like, oh, just throw it somewhere. And then when you see the opportunity, you're like, there's actually nowhere he could have thrown this football.
As you see on this play, really the only real option would have been Parker Hesse on this chip flat. The setup that they tried to run was there as the defensive back failed to switch off in the back end and man coverage, but the linebacker instead bracketed it off. So then the second look would have been the running back out of the backfield where the vacated linebacker was, unfortunately, though, not having the time to get to that read.
Alexander doesn't separate. Calhoun doesn't. Nobody separates in the back of the end zone. The pressure is there quickly, so there's really nothing you can do with the ball in that spot. You have the other opportunity where Kennedy separates, but the pressure is immediately on him from Storstil, so he steps up in the pocket. Now there's more pressure, and he can't get back across the field to Peoples-Jones. Pressure was a problem, and we're going to get to that. That being said, I think there was occasions like, the little curl route, the curl flat that they ran where you could see he was waiting for that hole to open up, like to try to hit the curl, and he didn't have time to wait for that. But this, probably my least favorite play from Sudfeld in this game was when he was there looking at the curl route, and it's almost like, how did you not see the pressure right in your face? And then he tried to come back to the flat, but it was clearly going to be late. Back to Mitchell. He got us back in position. Obviously, the early one to Antoine Green where he ended up taking the stack instead of throwing it, which I didn't have an issue with him not throwing it. I was just like, okay, I could see why he didn't throw that, right? The cornerback kind of playing the in-between game, but then you lose a couple.
And I think this is the kind of thing where you just almost want to see him maybe have more trust and faith in his receivers to just go make a play. Because here for Fountain on this design rollout, they go into a cover 2 look on a 4th down. You get the high-low set up. As you can see, Fountain maybe takes a little bit longer to separate here, but him pushing back inside holds the nickel cornerback down so that he can't drop out and take it away. But without that immediate separation, pushing inside, then breaking back out, Sudfeld decides not to throw that pass, so he pulls it down, comes back to the crosser, which if he would have stayed there, maybe could have opened up late, and then you get the interception.
You lose a couple, and then, of course, the 4th down play where Fountain didn't really separate on the play, early at least, so he got off the route and then went back to the crosser, and he had to throw it somewhere because it was a design rollout. If he would have stuck with Fountain, it could have had a chance on the sideline, but he got off of that, which, again, understandably so. There's push in his face. He got off the route, tried to come back to it, and he had to throw it. So I'm not mad at the pick because it's like, hey, do that rather than, not throw the football in that spot. But overall, that was the biggest thing for me is I just thought reactiveness to pressure was the biggest issue, and there were a couple times, especially early, where it was like, man, let's just let the ball go, just see what happens on the play. That being said, though, I do think that this still was completely it has been overblown for him for the most part. Just depends on who you're talking to, I guess. A couple things. First off, pass pro was a disaster, mainly from the tackle position. So I like the interior. I thought Colby Sorstil was pretty awful in this game, to be honest with you. He was better once he came in the second time, but he was pretty darn bad up to that point in pass protection. Manu really struggled in pass pro as well, so both tackle positions was a disaster in terms of pass protection back there, and obviously he's playing a different style when he's constantly in the pocket. There was multiple batted passes where even if they weren't sacks, it was like, well, he's getting pushed to his lap, and it's like the first read, you're having a pass batted down. You had the early one that was thrown out to Fountain on the little underneath route, which Colby was pushed to his lap. It was batted at the line of scrimmage. You had a one to Caden Davis, which was batted at the line of scrimmage. You had multiple passes batted at the line where partially I'm like, okay, I want to move, but if you do move, you're slowing down the timing, and now you're coming that curl route late. If it's your first read, boom, 3-step plant, let it go. And I'm like, well, hold up, move out of the pocket and then throw it. Well, now it's like, okay, that first read is no longer going to be there. So I liked his early decision-making, but with the pass pro, there had to be a different adjustment. I didn't think there was a great adjustment. There was also some poor routes, like the back of the end zone where he had nowhere to throw it, like the Fountain one where the defensive back basically ran the route for Fountain to play. It's actually a really good play by the DB. Less on Fountain for me, a little bit more by what the DB did there. Took that route away, and it's like, well, he just jumped the route. So, again, I think this one is overblown. I don't think it was the worst game of all time.
And to me, there's clearly two sides to this. Number one, Sudfeld is willing to give one-on-one opportunities, and we do need our playmakers to go make plays. Fountain getting cut off on the route, or the one-on-one opportunities we took on the outside, where receivers pushed out of bounds like Caden Davis was, or here Fountain on the back shoulder didn't make a play. Outside of Jalen Calhoun drawing the defensive pass interference, who really didn't take advantage of these opportunities, and he was willing to do that when he got the right coverage look, and that's the aspect that I like of Sudfeld's game, is that he recognizes coverage, and he usually knows where the windows are there. For him, it's about, one, feeling the pressure and just saying, abandon everything, or secondly, trusting that the timing is going to be there, even though you maybe, these aren't your starting receivers and they're not separating the way that you're used to. Trusting that, hey, stick to the game plan. He's going to separate if he has that opportunity.
And obviously, I like Nate Sudfeld, so I want to see him play in another game. I want to see things be more stable, more consistent. I want to see him be a little more aggressive. That's the biggest thing. I want to see him be more aggressive. But I think the big thing for me is what I liked him was decision-making. And I thought, for the most part, that was good. I thought his ability and awareness to read coverage was still there. I just want to see him, be a little bit more aggressive in certain spots. But to be honest with you, the situation was a disaster. Wasn't as bad as I think people have made out to be. There was some bad throws. but it wasn't like the worst thing of all time. There is way worse performances that we saw in the preseason. I don't think it was that bad, to be honest with you. So, again, I could be alone on that, Alan. That's fine with me, but that's where I have him. I have him in the down category for sure because I expect a lot of Sudfeld. I'm a Sudfeld fan, but it wasn't the worst game of all time. Like, I completely disagree with that, and I'm still a fan of Sudfeld, and I want to see what he does with this week because I think he's going to play a lot better this week, and most people walk away like, oh, that's good. Look, man, this isn't the first time I've said this before. It's not like I'm just picking Sudfeld here. I did the same thing with golf last year. I put the video out, and I sat here and I said, hey, he had a 3-game skid with interceptions. We talked through each interception, and I was like, look, golf is not going to be the reason we don't get to where we want to go. And people were off the bandwagon immediately on golf with that 3 games because the interceptions. And then what did golf do? He turned it up. He cooked. Go to the NFC Championship game. Not saying that Sudfeld's locked to make the team, but I'm saying, like, I don't just say these things to say these things. I say what I believe, so that's what I believe. Let's continue on, though, because Sorstel, whose pass pro was rough, I thought he did an okay job in run blocking, especially, like, front-siding blocks and zone blocks. He could do that back in college, too. Run game negative, so, again, receiver blocking was a problem as well. Sometimes it was just, like, miscommunication. There was a play where I can't tell if we were trying to run a false pull or the guard just pulled and he didn't know the play and we ran a zone play. It looked weird. Usually you don't see false pulls like that. Usually when I see a false pull, it's like, hey, he's pulling with the read, and it's not going that direction, so we're going to consider that a false pull rather than an outside zone where the right guard pulls. Like, that's not normal to go then to the – because then you just left under the gap. It kind of worked, though, because the linebacker saw the pull and stepped down, so maybe it was. It was a short game, but it was like, hey, man, I mean, I don't think that was on purpose. But too many, like, hey, receiver doesn't get the block here. We whiff on the block here. Source still whiffed on the screen block. We saw that one as well. Receiver doesn't step down. We had the one where, Andrew Phillips dove into the backfield and nobody blocked it. Like, that killed our run game to me way more than the offensive line. I thought it was the offensive line from, watching live. It was much more of that, just bad assignments, poor receiver blocking. Outside of the toss play, actually blocked pretty well in the toss play. Caden Davis got out there. Kennedy was out there as well. Connor Galvin, I hate that he's injured. I'm a Connor Galvin fan, but I did put him on this list. I thought his pass pro was just disappointing for me. I don't expect him to be a people mover, but I thought his pass pro was just pretty disappointing in this game. Fountain is really based on expectation, truly just kind of where he was at. Again, it's my expectation, so I was lower on Fountain coming in. I didn't think he would make the 53. I don't think Fountain was that bad necessarily watching it back. Like, obviously, he had the opportunity in the back shoulder, wasn't caught. Then, obviously, you had the play where the route was ran for him. But he did separate underneath. That ball could have been caught if it doesn't get batted at the line of scrimmage. So I don't think it was that bad necessarily. I just am concerned about his ability to separate consistently. That being said, though, I don't think it was like the worst game ever and he can't come back from this. I just don't think he helped himself, especially when you have Green, Isaiah Williams, and what they did. Caden Davis, again, for me, I'm a Caden Davis guy. I had high expectations, and I didn't think he performed that well. He did have a reception underneath, and for me, the biggest issue was he didn't block that well, and again, route running wasn't great. There was the go ball, which I think was a go ball, where he got literally walked out of bounds, and it was like, where's Sudfeld supposed to put the ball? You just got drove out of bounds. It's like, hey, single eye, you threw it out there, and you got pushed out of bounds. Like that kind of thing. Not every route was bad. I would like to see what the curl route was going to turn into, and he did separate. Like we saw him on a crossing route. He had a really nice hesitation, took off, separated, but overall, for me, I was just disappointed because I have really high hopes for what Caden Davis can be, and I want to see a lot more next week, especially as a run blocker as well. But he did have the good toss block, as I pointed out. Kendall Vildor. Now, actually, Vildor wasn't terrible in this game. I think the biggest thing we're doing with Vildor is that their cornerback position is strong, right? It's really strong. He had the DPI, which was part of the reason that they ended up sealing the game at the end, a little RPO slant on the backside. He was physical. Maybe didn't have to be, but he was pretty physical pretty early, and he was like that throughout the route. And he was also targeted this game with some incomplete passes as well. He also made a stop on third down, which got him off the field, even though he was beat on the whip route. But he made the stop, and he kept him from getting the first down. I don't think it was a bad game necessarily for Vildor. It was fine, but it wasn't standout. And versus the other cornerback position and what we have there right now, how guys are performing, I don't think he helped himself after this game. Bettger, I thought Ike Bettger struggled in this game as well, specifically for me as a run blockers where this stood out, specifically creating movement consistently as our left guard, specifically in pass pro. I didn't think he did that well in pass pro at all for the Lions in this game, so I thought Ike Bettger was kind of standout. Like, he really seemed to struggle in this game at the left guard spot. I think he opened the door for some other guys to potentially take that role onto the third team. James Houston, I think this was more so just how natural it looked, and we'll break this down more when we go defensive line. I think just more so just how unnatural it looked him playing like a full Sam linebacker. Coverage drops, inefficient, didn't look fluid necessarily. When he was at off-ball linebacker, didn't look great. There was one time I was like, oh, that looked pretty good. And I was like, oh, that was Malik Jefferson. So that wasn't him. That was the biggest thing. It was like, hey, maintain your gap, holding your ground. The run defense went out the window seemingly as soon as he had to step off ball. That was just very inconsistent. Obviously, he's not built greatly to play on the line, but you have to add that flexibility for that role. And I didn't think he stood out there at all in terms of that flexibility. I thought he was fine as a pass rusher. I thought there was some good. It wasn't dominant dominant, but I thought there was good. He had the offside call, which wasn't great. I thought he was fine, those pass rusher. He just didn't get as many straight opportunities to rush the passer, but they want to see him expand his game. I think the Lions know, like, hey, he can rush the passer, right? But we want to see what else he can do. We need to see if he can bring these other things to the table, and I don't think this was a game that you would point to and be like, he shows that he can do that. Like, he showed that he can move, and he does play with some awareness, as we saw, but he's just played slow in that role for the Lions in this game. He had some inside wins, which was nice as a pass rusher, but overall, I didn't think it was a great performance. Then we have Burton at right guard, another guy that I just think struggled consistently at the point of attack. Manu, his run blocking was fine. He actually showed some good reps of just pushing guys off their spy. Pass pro was maybe the worst that I had seen. I mean, he had a lot of reps, though, in fairness, but pass pro was really rough. There was good reps in there. There was good things in there. Gave up some of the inside wins similar to like he did back in college, but also he gave the soft edge way too much. There were other times where he'd get beat on the bull rush instantly and create immediate walk back. Manu definitely struggled in pass pro in this game. I don't think there was like really even like a good stretch. Maybe there was, and we'll see that, but I don't think there was like a good stretch of play as in pass pro. I just thought overall it was rough. It was very shaky. It was very inconsistent. And then, of course, Bam Knight and Jake Funk. Not to say they were necessarily bad, but rushing the football specifically, I didn't think either of these guys stood out. I thought Bam Knight just didn't look like he could create much after contact. And then Jake Funk, I thought there was times where it was like vision-wise, he wasn't putting himself in a great spot, but he did have some solid runs. Jake Funk, I feel like I shouldn't have him here. That being said, though, again, the running back position to me with Craig and Jefferson, who I thought was good, and Vaki, what he did, we probably need more for you to try to find a way to make this team. I think that's the challenge. Now, onto the players that were kind of up and down for me in this game. We have Mekhi Wingo. Mekhi Wingo looked athletic, and there were flash reps where he handled double teams and combo blocks pretty well from the interior. It was nice. I don't think he's necessarily built for that at the NFL level, even though he did it back at LSU, but you saw some ability. Right? He flashed like, oh, I got the technique to make this happen, and that was good. You saw laterally he had real movement skills against zones, so you saw upside there, and he had a handful of reps where he was able to get on the edge and create some pressure. It wasn't consistent. He wasn't a dominant pass rusher, but there was a handful of reps. Some of them started to stall out, and as a run defender, it was very hit and miss for me there. I thought he showed a lot of good traits. It just wasn't always that consistent. There was flashes, but it wasn't consistent. Obviously, the big run was a part of that as well. So, again, I have pretty high expectations for Wingo. It's just kind of trying to figure out his role, but I think what he did was kind of expected in a way. Like, I think that was very understandable. Got Broderick Martin here on here as well. Broderick probably had a little bit more good than bad for me, but overall with Broderick Martin in this game, like, again, he looked athletically like he was in a really good spot. He showed some ability to get pass rush, some ability to control his gap. Then we saw him towards the end of the game, kind of sealed the game with laterally, unable to move laterally. The quickness was not there. He ends up falling down in the zone run, opens up a gap. He can't control his gap, and they end up picking up the first down. That kind of thing is an area where he needs to improve. Now, we saw some good where he was able to control. He doesn't really finish that often once he gets an edge, which is just something I think you're going to have to live with, is that he doesn't have a consistent ability to like get an edge and then finish. He obviously had the sack in this game. He showed ability to work, and he also showed a lot better get off consistency with, I think, not being straight up. There were times where I didn't feel like he was getting the same knockback. It was a little hit and miss, but he did do better, I thought, getting off the line. He had the one play where he kind of just knocked the offensive lineman onto the ground. So things looked improved. It just wasn't perfect. There was up and down there for me with Broderick Martin. Mo Norris obviously gave up the reception, which wasn't terrible, but his weight was leaned back, and then he gave up the other one, which was dropped by the tight end. But Mo Norris, where he is playing for the Lions, I think is big, being on the second team at that safety position. I think Mo Norris still showed ability as a run defender outside of the time that he was shook in space, and really outside of this straight-up man-to-man reps. But he's going to have to show that flexibility there to find a way to make this team, I think, for sure. Sean McEwen, really, for me, the big thing is that I thought some of his blocking was good. Not consistent run blocking. There was some good in there where he like had a good seal block on one run play where he really handled the edge well. I think it was one of their outside linebackers. Pass pro I thought was really strong as well from Sean. I thought Sean had some up and down. I put Jamar Jefferson and Craig up and down here rushing the football. I thought Jefferson had one, which was I was like, I don't know what he's looking at there. And then Craig Reynolds didn't really pop in this game either, but Craig's just such a consistent pass protector that you kind of know what you're going to get from Craig Reynolds. Reese Alexander had one of the better routes of the game, a deep curl route, which picked up a first down on the third for Sudfeld, and that was a beautiful route. Just the ability to separate there, and he's shown that in practice now. We saw, yesterday. I don't think it was the same route, but similar on the sideline. So see that carry over to game was cool. He also showed ability to really block. Obviously, the returning, the muff, that's not great necessarily. That's not a good thing to put out there. And now Calhoun, who drew the DPI, getting over top, ball probably a little bit underthrown, but drew the DPI, and then obviously had a little whip route, which he showed really strong hands, and potentially would have had a touchdown if the ball was on him on the out route. That being said, there was other reps in there where I didn't feel like he was separating that well for us, and that's the big thing, is just consistent separation is going to be needed from Calhoun. Honestly, I wanted to put him up in the up category, and to be honest, if he would have caught that touchdown, if that ball would have been on him and he scores that, he probably ends up in the up category. So I'm probably leaning more towards up with Calhoun. I think it was promising. I just didn't put him in that category yet. For me, Peoples-Jones, I was much higher after having initially seen it, but then rewatching with the All-22, I was a little bit lower. Like, ooh, he's not really separating on any of these comeback routes. I guess just don't run those, but he wasn't really separating. They were kind of playing underneath all of them. His dig routes, a little bit of separation, wasn't great. I feel like if the ball was still thrown, he would just come down with it contested-wise. And he had a really nice grab behind him on the quick play-action post. That was beautiful. Good anticipation throw there. And it was just good reactiveness and athleticism by Peoples-Jones to pull that one down. But I just thought the times that he wasn't getting the football, the inconsistency to separate, put him lower for me than anything. I'm not as high as I was in initial, kind of talk of the game, but I'm also not necessarily down on him either. I'm kind of middling right now on Donovan Peoples-Jones. Continuing, of course, we have Malik Jefferson and Strickland, two guys that are more so in the up category for me. First off, Lawrence Strickland, I didn't think he looked great in straight man coverage when he played the slot role, but adding that flexibility, that's his opportunity to make the team to me. Like, that's how he's going to do it. And I thought he would make the initial 53, so I had higher expectations there, and I didn't think he looked great in man-to-man coverage. Malik Jefferson, again, that's a guy that's been dominant in the preseason since he got here, so I had higher expectations too, and he made some flash plays. He shut down the screen in this game, which is where the one where Matthew Betts got some really nice pressure, quick win on the left tackle. I thought he popped. He had some good flash plays. He held his gap a couple of times. There were other times where I thought he was washed out on the backside, kind of playing that will linebacker role for us, so I think there was a lot more good than bad, and especially where he's at on the depth chart, I think he helped himself. If anything, I think he moved himself up, but the linebacker room is loaded to me, and Malik Jefferson, what he did is what he's done elsewhere. He was really good in the preseason elsewhere. So I lean higher on both of those guys, probably a little bit higher on Malik Jefferson after this first game. Matthew Betts I put on here as well. He only played 7 snaps, but I thought he really showed juice. Like, there were at least three, where it was like, okay, he's getting after it here. Inside wins. He showed the real quickness in the lower body, some contact balance. He showed big-time agility, which was always the case, and just being a straight rusher. Now, setting the edge run defense, that's going to be the challenge for him. That is the challenge I'm circling, especially as a pure defensive end, and he needs to be consistent there. But I just want to see more, because pass rush-wise, it feels like traits, he could have a monster game in the preseason. It feels like he could have multiple sacks. I completely believe that. If the team's throwing a lot, I think he can come up with multiple sacks. Defense, that's got to come together. And then Pat O'Connor. Like, Pat O'Connor played inside, outside. Wasn't always that consistent from the inside. But overall, I'm going to put Pat O'Connor on middling, because he actually flashed more than I expected. He kind of like made a name, I think, for himself in this game. It just wasn't consistent based on where he was lined up.
So I decided to go back through and kind of detail this, and I'm going to call this middle category trending. So if you watched to this point, shout out to you. I kind of explained these as I went through it, but I thought I would at least label these. So as you can see, I have Mekhi Wingo trending up. Didn't want to put him in the up category specifically, but he's trending up right now, showing all the different traits that he could bring to the table. You just want more consistent dominance and really figuring out the role. Broderick Martin also up. I can't forget the batted passes. He also had a line of scrimmage. Still some issues that could pop up, and if you want him consistently on the field, he has to clean those up, but definitely trending up. I'm going to put Mo Norris down and Sean McEwen down as well for the pass game impact and also the tight end depth that we have. Jamar Jefferson up with the special teams value that he brings. Also, I just feel like he's consistent right now. He's not a splash player, and I don't know if I'll ever get there, but he definitely feels consistent, and it definitely feels like a guy that's been here for multiple seasons. I think you can tell that by the pass game. I'm also going to put Craig Reynolds down in this category as well, in wake of Vaki going up and also Jamar Jefferson up. Maurice Alexander, I'm going to say down mainly because of the muff return and also only one reception. And again, the receiver position, guys like Jalen Calhoun, I'm going to say that he was trending up. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I said down. That's mainly based on expectation here. But Malik Jefferson, absolutely up. He has performed well. I think it's going to be really difficult for him to find a way to make the roster because of where the linebacker position is at. But that doesn't mean that he didn't do way more good than bad in this pass game. And next week, I wouldn't be shocked if he's trending up for me, because this is a guy that also flashed immediately in training camp. As well as, I'm going to put Matthew Betts down because we just really haven't seen enough, though I loved his flashes. And me personally, I think he has a massive week next week. But as of now, I'll say technically trending down because 7 snaps just not enough. Pat O'Connor, of course, we're going to go up there as well. And I'm going to say Lawrence Strickland is up. Showing flexibility in his position definitely helps his opportunity to make the team. So I'm going to leave it there. Trending is what we're going to call this middle category.
I think we hit on everything pretty well there. Not every player is included. I do plan on doing the defensive line breakdown. We can still do the quarterback one if you guys really want to see me talk through it, but, you know, we also don't have to either. But we'll see. We'll have probably something similar like this to next week for next week as well, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you use that top link in the description or that top pinned comment, man. Shout out to BetUS. Thank you for sponsoring us for today's video and for the NFL season. I'm going to leave it right there. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.